Okay, everyone, thank you for coming. So I hope this is going to be quite an interactive session. So I want everyone to chuck up hands, write stuff down, and we'll use the whiteboard as well. And there will be some videos. There's like a mild graphic warning. There's a bit of animal suffering in some of the videos, but it's not horrific. So just bear that in mind as well. So, my name is Shakira. I've been a veterinary nurse for 15 years. And since I was very young, I was, I guess, quite a strong advocate for animals. I worked in pet shops and used to always just take animals home without the consent of the shop owner because they were supposed to be snake food. And just very early on, I feel like I was very lucky to just have the mindset of knowing that animals just needed to be considered in different ways to how they were. I've been vegan for about 10 years and became an activist about 6 years ago. I currently work in referral, which is actually thankfully run by a really great vegan guy. And I work in emergency clinics as well. So all sorts of situations come in at night can be quite challenging, especially with working with a lot of vets with very different morals and skill sets and investments in different animals that come in, especially animals that aren't technically owned. I like to assist with one-to-one rehabs of animals. I feel like that's something that not all sanctuaries can offer, and I generally do try and cover the costs of all of those things myself as well. And I'm always learning. Like, there's never a day that I feel like I don't learn whenever I work with any of these patients. I think that's something that you just can't learn from a textbook. Some of these situations are not planned, so it's always good just to try and learn from all of these situations that come. And one thing I do a lot is I try to challenge care plans that are given to people, whether that's people that have companion animals or whether that's people that have animals in sanctuaries as well. A lot of the time, that we can always do better. It could be something so small, but we can always do better. And, we are still very behind when it comes to human medicine versus animal medicine. So I personally really believe that we need to know what to do in action to truly help animals. I don't know if anyone went to the Animal Justice Project talk earlier with the investigations. Now, if you are doing an action at a farm or you happen to be on a farm, it's really handy to actually know how to work with these animals. If you don't have some of that experience, it can really, really stun you when you're in there, and you may be faced with something like I was with this piglet called Sky, who I was absolutely frozen with inability to do anything when I was on a farm in Barcelona, and that shook me to the core. I don't know if any of you have seen this photo. It kind of really did do the rounds, which is still pretty haunting. So first, I really want to address the issue of language. The words that we choose when we are describing animals is fundamental in how we evolve as a community. And certainly when we're talking about animal protection and justice, we need to be speaking with the animals or for the animals in a way that's actually progressive. We currently really do view them as property, and that's obviously a legislation thing as well. So let's start getting interactive. I want everyone to get really involved. So why do we think that calling animals it is problematic? Who in this room feels like they call animals it? Okay. Sometimes I suppose. Yeah, I think I've caught myself recently doing it. I thought, oh my God, I need to sort that out. So yeah, it's obviously a language and certain wording that we've been using for a really long time. It does take time to change. So don't be mean to yourself, but it's important to just be mindful and pull yourself up and others. I think it was yesterday or this morning, One Green Planet did a post talking of, I think they were a dog, calling them it. Come on. I mean, they've got a massive amount of followers and they really shouldn't be using that type of language. So the other term that we see a lot, especially obviously in veterinary medicine and in the rescue world, is the owner. So the legal owner. Who or why do we think that is also problematic? Yeah. So it just means for me, I feel like it means that we have ownership over them, so therefore we make choices for them, whereas they can't make choices for themselves. And also, I really believe that animals are part of our community. We do not own them; they are part of us. They're part of our communities, and I'm going to go through that about decision making for them in terms of their care. I think it's really important. This is a little chicken who I actually picked up from another sanctuary. She doesn't look too badly debeaked here, but she was debeaked. She came out of an egg facility and she had probably 80% of the top of her head completely exposed. Her skull was completely exposed. And I don't think a vet on a sanctuary would have done what I had done. And it's not about me being wonderful. It's just about resources and being aware of, like, there are other options. So we'll go into that as well. She was implanted and she passed actually over Easter. She went from this completely disheveled hen to top dog in her little group. So we've kind of gone through some of this already in terms of why using language is very important in terms of the words that we choose to use. Now, by law, animals are considered as property. Hopefully, all of you would be aware of the Non-Human Rights Project over in America about how animals are classed as things. And we need to start being progressive in our activism and the way that we talk about animals as well. And this is all part of it. And I think this picture captures that perfectly, how we just put animals in a cage for our entertainment, and this is just to go in someone's home. They are an object, they are a piece of property, and I think we need to practice what we preach. So the conversations that we're having need to be progressive in the way that we're speaking about animals. So a lot of people don't maybe know what words to use instead of using the term it, especially if they've been using that type of language for a long time. So if you don't know their gender, you can obviously use they, them, is fine. And even in terms of who's taking care of them, so carer, caregiver, guardian, or family member. Now, I'm very privileged to work in a place where out of probably 35 clinics that I've worked at in the last 15 years, the clinic I work at now is you are not allowed to use the term owner. You are to use the term carer or caregiver, and we do not use the term it either. They are called she, he, they, them, which is also really nice. It's not used so much in the ICU ward. I think that's just down to just like high pressure and people just not being mindful because you are literally trying to save lives there and then. So one thing I'm very passionate about, if you're following me on social media, you'll know that I speak about this a lot, which is breed label assignment. What has anyone else learned of this or seen this anywhere else? Anyone else talking about this subject? So what I'm speaking about is how even people that care for dogs, whether they're in the rescue world, whether they care for a dog or whether they're in the vets, whatever, a lot of people will assign them a breed label, which is not correct. Unless you've got a dog that's 100% clearly a Dalmatian or clearly a West Highland Terrier, by you assigning them a breed label is really problematic because you are going to basically give someone this thought that, okay, this dog is a Malinois cross with a Staffy. We got problems. And it's going to change the way that people perceive them, the way that people act around them, and their ability to actually get into a new home. So unless it's factual, the dog doesn't need you to give them a breed label. What he or she needs is for you to say, this is this kind of dog, they're a mixed breed, they're small, medium, large, and they love laying on the sofa for 6 hours a day, and they're super lazy. They're the kind of the ways that you want to be describing dogs. Giving them a breed label does not assist them in their ability to be rehomed. I personally think it's really detrimental. When I went over to America to explore some of this, the dogs in American shelters that were kind of managed by Best Friends Society, they were all called small, medium and large American shelter dogs, and it really helped in their ability to rehome. I've tried to have conversations with rescues over here, but it just seems to be such a weird taboo subject. People are obsessed with breed labelling, and I don't know why. As vets and veterinary professionals, you can't just be like, oh yeah, it's a tumour. and that's it. You need to be having your evidence. And even with DNA samples and stuff, they're not always accurate either. And literally, what is the point? Like, what value we bring to the table by saying that they're a German Shepherd crossed with a Labrador? Like, it's literally of no value. So the other thing that we say a lot, and I was really grateful actually, someone pulled me up on social media about 4 or 5 years ago now, when I said, these monkeys in this zoo, whatever, they're so innocent. And has anyone else unpicked that word when describing animals or uses it? Innocent babies, innocent lambs, that kind of thing. So it kind of makes them, it almost gives them this way of being that it doesn't matter, or it shouldn't matter whether they're guilty or not guilty. They're just an animal. Using the term innocent makes out as if they haven't done anything wrong, then they shouldn't be in jail, or they shouldn't be there anyway. I don't know if that makes any sense, but using the term innocent isn't always helpful. Anyway, so today's workshop, I'd like us to try and get as interactive as possible. So we're going to use the whiteboard, and it would be nice if everyone kind of just joined in. I really, really do believe that knowledge is power. I mean, some of this stuff can be really, really life-saving. I'm going to go through some case studies with you as well. So hands up whenever you want. If they've got any questions midway, just let me know. So in this room, what sort of animals has everyone worked with in here? Pigs. Sorry? Yeah, okay, good. Anyone else? Amazing. I'm guessing that was out. Yeah, okay, cool. Anyone else?
Animals from Colombia, Latin America, so reptiles, mammals.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Anyone else?
I used to work with reindeer and also back in the day.
That's nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, cows have farms. So.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel like when you start to expand the species that you work with, oh my God, there's just so much to learn all the time. I feel like I'm forever learning, and I'm really grateful for that. I was really into reptiles when I was young, was like obsessed with Steve Irwin, and then begun to obviously understand that some certain things were problematic with keeping wildlife. And I was that person. I had a lot of reptiles when I was young, but it has taught me a lot. And obviously I can utilize that work that I've done now to try and assist animals in other ways. Okay, so we're going to start with rabbits. What do you guys feel is the most important in terms of rabbit care if we're talking about a bit of a last minute situation? What do you think is important for them? Diet, yeah. Whether they're injured, whether there's a farm that's been emptied or you're at a farm, that kind of thing, or there's a big rescue underway, whether there's a hoarding situation, something like that.
Dark, quiet, closed space, and not putting them with opposite sex.
Okay.
We're also very delicate animals, so the handling.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Fear kicks in quite quickly, but I mean, I know animals will experience fear.
Yeah.
We found rescued rabbits, the things like phantom presses across the more frequently.
Yeah.
And kind of getting so fearful that they have heart attacks.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Constant access to food.
Yeah.
And then there's these shoot down ice. What's it called? Begins with there. There we go.
So disease.
It's not a little bit very easy.
Okay, cool. I like this. Okay, anything else?
I think I know you're just going to hold chunk about breeds, but like with rabbits, like with specific breeds, there's a lot of health issues that come with them. So if you've got like smaller rabbits with the squash faces. There's a lot of like dental work going in there.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah.
Long ears, ear care.
Hmm. Okay, anything else?
Somewhere to hide.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to go through a situation that I was in a couple of years ago. And this is the rabbit that actually came out. Her name is Natiri. So there was an action that was due to happen in Barcelona at a rabbit farm. And basically what I had been told is all the previous rescues, all the rabbits had died within about 2 weeks of rescue. And I've got a funny feeling that maybe this may have started to happen after the big rescue from TNS rabbits here as well. I don't have fact of that, but I heard from a few sanctuaries that some of them didn't live very long. So my thoughts of this was that what was happening was the rabbits were coming out of the farm, and obviously we've got no history on each individual. We don't know if they're sick. We know that rabbits are very good at hiding symptoms because they're a prey species. And basically my thoughts were that they were dying of gut stasis. Has everyone in this room heard about gut stasis? Okay, so rabbits need to eat continuously or they will literally just get digestive problems and eventually they will die. It's very painful, and good rabbit caregivers are quick to identify this because it's so detrimental. They need medication and they need like specific intervention to actually ensure that they survive. So this rabbit particular, Natiri, the reason I saw her was because she was upside down and she was spinning in a wire cage. So she caught my eye and I went and grabbed her. Now, I presumed that she would have been very dehydrated because if she's upside down, she wouldn't have been able to get access to food and water. So those are the types of things that need immediate intervention. Now, the other aspect of this is that rabbits that are then being taken from one place, maybe fed a specific type of food, so probably pellet food or terrible muesli, but obviously in a farm they're going to be for fattening, they're going to be large breeds, and obviously for large pelts for the fur industry as well. So what we did and what we had to basically try to prepare for was that these rabbits were going to get taken from one place, probably have quite a stressful ordeal of being caught by strange people, put into carriers, taken in a van, and then taken somewhere else. Now, I actually don't know where they went. There was a lot of care taken about the safety of these rabbits at that particular action. And what we did is we planned to do a halfway stop unless there was an emergency. There were a couple that needed intervention there and then. Some of them had fractures. Natiri was very, very dehydrated and she was spinning very, very badly and would obviously have been dehydrated from that as well. So those rabbits had immediate intervention. They were all gut loaded at the farm with about 10 to 15 mils of what's called critical care. So critical care is a powder. Anyone that's got rabbits will know what that is. It's a really good powder. You mix that up. Now, it's just a way of like preventing them basically starving during those couple of hours between the rescue and then going to the sanctuary. Because the next problem you've got is they go to a sanctuary. They maybe have never touched solid ground before. They maybe have never seen hay before and maybe never seen the food and the fresh food and the grass, all these things that they just haven't experienced before. And as prey species, they're going to sit there and do nothing for a short period of time until they start to explore their environment. So they're going to be going through a very, very stressful ordeal. So to prevent them not eating, and not getting any food on board is you can just gut load them. So the next slide, this was actually the rescue. You can see here, these two little baby rabbits. I think one of them had a fractured leg. I mean, you can see that they were hungry and yeah, just got some of that into them before they went to the sanctuary. And I must say, I was pleasantly surprised that not only did all of them survive, but the two pregnant ones were taken, which was nothing to do with me. They gave birth and all the babies survived as well. So it was a very, very successful rescue. And I would like to hope that the intervention was that good, because it was very unusual that they all survived. Now, you don't need to be a professional to be able to feed these rabbits. You just need to be careful. And I think that this is a really good guide of how to syringe feed them. You can use 1 ml syringes, which is slightly smaller, or you can use the big syringe here, which has got quite a long, slim tip. And as long as you just get it down either side of the mouth, not straight down the middle, then you're generally going to be quite safe. Wrapping them in a towel does really help as well. Has anyone got any questions about that?
It's the same for guinea pigs, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Yeah. Any animal that's got sort of big complex guts like that, they can go through periods of starvation, which is generally never a good thing.
Is there a wait period? So when you rescue some types of birds, you're supposed to leave it usually 24 hours if you don't know what's been happening, because they're practically solid.
Mhm.
If they eat, they'll just basically choke because they can't digest on food. Is that the same for rabbits, or is it safe to give them feed?
Yeah, I mean, with rabbits where they should be eating constantly, the likelihood of you sort of damaging them by gut loading them would be very unlikely. Yes, it's stressful. That's probably the only thing. Or if they had some sort of injury and then you burrito wrap them, you might obviously hurt them if they've got, say, a fractured shoulder, which me and Alice found when we emptied the TNS farm. So that's the only thing, just be mindful of any injuries if it is like an emergency rescue in that way. But yeah, so that simple intervention, that simple bit of knowledge had a profound impact. And that's why knowing your species, I personally think is really, really important. And Natiri went on and oh my God, did she thrive. And she got so big, she was massive. So she did really, really well. But yeah, also in terms of the breed, so flat-faced rabbits, which really should be in the brachycephalic category, same as pugs and bulldogs, they do need different care. They will be very prone to dental disease, eye problems and ear problems. It's all obviously very interlinked. So just be mindful if there are rabbits that are coming in from other locations and they do kind of need specialist care. We did take all the rabbits that were left behind with me, which was Natiri and the 2 pregnant ones. We did take them to the vet the next day just to get a good check over. The rest went to a sanctuary and everyone was fine. Everyone just needed their nails clipped and everyone obviously needed panicure for 28 days. I probably didn't explain earlier, the head spinning and the upside down behavior is caused by a parasite known as echiniculi. It's very, very common in farms like this. The TNS rabbits in the UK, a lot of them had severe head tilts, which some of them have never recovered from. Luckily, Natiri was caught quite young, but that's why you do need a decent vet to be able to prescribe you medications like that for them to sort of go on and thrive and hopefully live a fairly normal life afterwards. But obviously, when their head is very, very tilted, they can be quite difficult to treat. You just need to be careful when you're sort of syringing anything in that they do swallow it. Yeah.
What was the feed you said?
It's called critical care. It's basically just like a very, very high fibrous, powder, and you just follow the instructions, add some water. If you find that you can't get it through the syringe and you're in a bit of an emergency, you can add a bit more water if it won't go through. As long as it's not too watery, otherwise you'll cause diarrhea or you give them aspiration pneumonia, so you just need to be a bit careful. Has anyone done a fish rescue in here? I hope this inspires you because this is one of my favourite rescues ever. So they are obviously very complex animals and you do need to have just a bit of knowledge to know what they need, because obviously their air is water. I mean, you need to know what kind of water they need in order for them to survive. So circumstances that you may encounter whereby an animal rights type action could happen, maybe at a live market, it could be at a specific fish market, a pet shop, or someone that you know is just not caring for fish properly. Now, does anyone know what species this is? Okay. Interesting. This is good. This is why everyone's here. This makes me happy. So this is a betta fish. Some of you may know them as Siamese fighting fish, and they are highly elaborate, very colourful, well-finned fish. Now, this guy was in a pet shop like that, just grey, hanging there. in quite classically how they keep them is in a jar of water. And what happens is where they defecate in the water and they're fed continuously in the water, all the toxins build up, and a lot of the pet shops just don't change the water. It's that basic. They aren't given heat, they aren't given filters, they aren't given any enrichment. They are just in a jar of water, and that is fully legal. So I worked some magic, and I said, if I buy all the equipment, will you give me this fish? Obviously, I wasn't going to buy him. And it worked. And I contacted a fantastic sanctuary who I cannot give enough credit to, which is Friends of Philip. They are specifically a vegan sanctuary for fish. Now, they primarily have taken on betta fish because they are probably one of the most neglected and abused fish in sort of the pet industry. And they were really, really helpful. I kind of had some knowledge, but I just needed like an extra check-in. And I will show you the before and after picture because, oh my God, it's beautiful. But there are a lot of different species, and I'm pretty good with species ID, but oh my God, there are hundreds of thousands of different species who all have very, very different needs. So obviously you've got different categories of fish. So you've got fish that will be labelled as food, so carp, tilapia, salmon, tuna, animals like that. Then obviously you've got your cold water fish, who could be your goldfish, for example. And then they've labelled these fish ornamental marine fish. And I actually looked it up the other day. The term ornamental means decorative, as if like these animals were just born to be plucked out of the ocean, wild, and go into a little tank to sit in our front room. And that is, again, all legal and above board. But all of those fish will have very different requirements. Some will need heat, some will need salt water, some will need cold, some will need sort of just normal fresh water, and some will need like heavy alkaline water, like cichlids, for example. They all do have very, very different needs. So it's important that you know the species that you're either going to intervene with or that you're going to care for, so you can give them the right care. It's really important. Obviously, you know, our breathing space, it's obviously very polluted, but we don't have to kind of worry too much about that. Whereas for fish, their world is the water quality that you've got them in. So it's really, really important you have some idea of the water you're going to put them in. I actually rescued a fish from a live carp from a Asian supermarket in East London, and she went to give me the fish. I kind of told her I was from the Fish Institute, and managed to stay in there for 3 hours until I got this fish out. I said, I'm not leaving until I leave with this fish. And she went to give me the fish in an empty bag. So be prepared for these crazy events. If you are going to rescue animals, just have a little bit of equipment with you. Luckily, I'd got my friend to go and get me some bags and got some water and stuff. I then tested the water and it was horrific. And I called, I think it was the AP, the animal plant, yeah. I called the government sort of official people, and they basically told me nothing. There's nothing they could do. They basically were very uninterested in all of that. He was just dying in this tank for obviously hours until I managed to get him out. He did die about 24, 48 hours later. And it was really frustrating because I was like, I will pay any fish fare and emergency V. I'm happy it was 100 quid. I said, just come here. But she already had appointments. And again, it's the same thing of like the speciesism in terms of like emergency care, because if that was a cat or dog, I'd be seen instantly. If it's a pigeon, no chance. If it's a fish, even less of a chance. So even the people that are caring or species-specific vets are still, in my view, still a bit problematic because that fish shouldn't have been left. And I'm not saying he could have been saved, but I was like, I'm willing to pay you. This is an emergency. I need you to come to my house. And he did die. And I was devastated because I was so desperate to save him. So the next picture. So that was 3 weeks. So that was him before acclimatizing to his tank. As you can see, he could barely even cope with the ripple of water in the tank, and you can see how horrific he looks. And this was 3 weeks later, and it was still a small tank, but I was in Greece. I was very limited in funds, and also what on earth I was going to do with this fish when I left. I was thinking of like, I'm gonna have to transport him on the plane and 100 meals in a clear bag. It was a whole thing, but luckily managed to find him a space, and he's doing really, really, really well now. But yeah, it just goes to show a little bit of knowledge can turn someone's life from this grey hanging misery into quite a happy little chappy. So yeah, knowledge definitely is key, and honestly, it's been one of my favourite rescues. So chickens is going to be probably quite a big subject. Does anyone in here have chickens? Yay! What kind of chickens do you have? Okay. Okay. From the egg industry or just fancy ones?
Yeah, they're like, so I work for a school, so the school got them as an experiment. And I was like, you're not sending them back. So
Nice.
so now we have, chickens.
Okay, nice. Cool. And you said, okay, great. How old are they? Okay. Okay. So there are quite stark differences between the way that industry birds need to be treated. So this is a chicken who was saved. There was actually a huge lorry incident near Watford Junction, and the whole lorry went over. And I think this is just like how things can just happen, and activists just need to be there because you can make a real difference. And there was chickens all over the road. There was wings trapped, heads trapped. It was an absolute bloodbath. It was bad. The police came, put all the screens up so we couldn't see anything. But luckily, one of my friends managed to grab one of the chicken and off she went. But what happened was, and this was illegal, I got the RSPCA to admit that this was illegal. The RSPCA were on site, and all the birds were all over the road. Now, by law, those birds should have seen a vet before they were retransported, and they weren't. Now, I was there on site. I had the everything printed and on my phone. The police wouldn't speak to me. The RSPCA officer wasn't interested. We had carriers ready to go to get animals out. It was probably one that I've been to a lot of places. I've seen a lot of things. I think that was one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like the sounds of, I mean, the activists were screaming because it was so awful. And no one wanted to help these birds. It was really baffling how just nobody cared. All they cared about was us not getting access to the birds. So they were illegally retransported, and the way that it was done with the fire brigade and everything, they had no vet to come and check these birds. They were reloaded, injured, sick, half dead, and taken to the local slaughterhouse, which was actually not far. Someone intervened, got these kids out, and the first thing we did was make sure they have water, basically. So this is your classic broiler bird, so your white Cornish cross. They are the birds that they were talking about earlier with the Humane League in here. So they get to what's called a slaughter weight or slaughter age at around 6 weeks. In organic chickens, they are left a bit longer. I believe it's 10 weeks, but by 10 weeks, they are, trust me, in much worse condition. In terms of the rehab of organic chickens, they are a lot worse. A lot of them will have much worse heart conditions. They will be more obese, and a lot of them have bumblefoot as well. So strangely enough, these ones weren't that bad. The first thing is basically to make sure they have water. These birds will overheat really, really quickly as well. So you need to make sure, if you even have, sounds silly, but even if you have like a little mist, like a little water mist, it will go onto their feathers and they'll preen and it will keep them cool. It's one of the top reasons that chickens die on the way to slaughter is dehydration and overheating, especially in the summer. They get very, very hot and they will die on the lorry. Giving them water is really important. There's obviously a huge situation in terms of their rehab, which is very, very challenging, where you've got an obese young bird. So you've got a bird that's just 6 weeks old who's technically a chick, but they're in a giant body and they want to eat, but you don't want them to eat because they're already obese. So trying to be mindful of what you're giving them to eat is really important. And again, broilers are so different to your layer hens, because layer hens will be emaciated when they come out, but the broilers are overweight. So it's really important just to make sure that you treat them very, very differently. So whereas your egg layer hens, generally they're going to be fully feathered if they're coming out of an egg facility, unless they're chicks. And they are going to need a very different type of food. I've got a video on the next one. I'll quickly show you actually because it's very cute. So this is Corey and Khalif. So what you can see is when these birds came, they were actually the opening presentation. They came to me collapsed in a carrier bag. They've been rescued, but they were in obviously such a bad way. So what I do is I scatter feed them bits of food amongst things like leaf litter and stuff to try and get them up and get them moving, because they don't want to do anything. Often their joints will be very painful as well, but you need to try and get them built up again. So yeah, I scatter feed them on Inco sheets in my bedroom at the time, and just gave them some leaf litter and some soil and some moss, and you can just see like they're having a great time. They're moving. That's part of weight loss and part of muscle formation, which is what you want. A lot of these birds would have been sat down for weeks on end at their developmental stage. So you want them to move around and build muscle and lose fat, but it's very, very challenging when you've kind of got a chick in a giant body. So it's important to do that, is to keep them busy and try and get them up and get them moving, and being very, very aware that they do need day and night. It's very important for birds to have sort of 12 hours day, 12 hours night, especially if they are in recovery. Some of the farms, I think it is kind of illegal here. However, I've definitely been to broiler farms where the lights are on all night. That's to encourage them to eat and to lay eggs. So it's really important that if you are rehabbing them, that you do give them that rest time at night. It's really, really important. So ideally put a cover over their crate or whatever they're in to make sure they definitely have some sleep. It's really important. You can always chuck a camera in there if you want to keep an eye on them. But generally, if you're going to be treating them with anything, it's usually twice a day, so morning and then evening just before they go to bed. In terms of the environment, again, ideally, we all like to see the naked layer hens that have no feathers and put them outside, but they've never been outside before. It's quite overwhelming. They're naked. They're probably a bit cold. So kind of don't put your wishes above what they actually need. You can get small little jumpers and tops for the birds that have no feathers, but it can be a bit of an issue when they're regrowing their feathers. Just be mindful of that as well. It can be quite overwhelming. I had a chicken with me in rehab who would only walk against the walls of the garden, and that's why free range chickens is just so ridiculous, because they've got nothing. It's just a barren open field, so they won't go outside because they feel so unsafe. So being mindful of that as well is really important. In terms of handling, again, the Humanely, we were talking about this earlier, an Animal Justice Project, of how these birds are handled. Broilers' legs will be painful. They will be painful. So whatever you do, don't pick them up by the legs. What I tend to do is put my hand sort of between their legs here and just hold them underneath, and just let their legs dangle. If you try to sort of hold their legs up against them, it will be painful. So just try and let them dangle. They probably will panic as well. So make sure that you hold them super close. And for the egg-laying chickens, you need to be very, very careful, because they have such major calcium depletion that they can fracture their bones in like a pathological way, because they've just got no calcium within their bone structures anymore. So you need to be very careful. And this is kind of like what I wanted to touch on earlier a little bit, but I didn't want to cause too much controversy with the Humane League's talk earlier regarding enriched cages. So it's all well and good changing things for welfarist reasons, but there were studies to show that enriched cages actually caused some of the birds more damage, because they were actually fracturing the keels on the perches. So that's why it's really important to be mindful of like other potentials when we're looking at changing things for the supposed better. It's about a bit like farrowing crates to sow stalls, or vice versa? Vice versa, and it's literally made no difference. What is it, a few inches? Yeah, same. So in terms of their symptoms, so again, birds, if they are ever open mouth breathing, that is a serious emergency. Do not wait. You need to go to your vet immediately. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care whether it's legal or illegal. You need to get to a vet. It's really important. Open mouth breathing in birds is very, very severe and very dangerous. When you're holding a bird, if they are open mouth breathing, you need to make sure that their chests are allowed to expand. Do not cuddle them and hold them. You'll overheat them and they won't be able to breathe normally. And it's quite traumatic to watch, but it's something that you need to be mindful of, and you just need to get to a vet. There's no two ways about it. Other symptoms, obviously, some birds are prone to upper respiratory problems, especially birds from high density spaces like barns, for example. A lot of them will be vaccinated against a lot of diseases. You don't need to worry too much about those things. But if they are showing upper respiratory problems or discharge or anything, again, you need to see a vet and get some antibiotics started. Now, a lot of people don't think that birds feel pain. It's a bit like the whole fish thing, and they really, really do. The difference of giving these chickens some pain relief and their ability to walk is so important, because it's a vicious cycle. If you've got a bird that's overweight and doesn't want to walk because they're painful, they're not going to lose weight. So it's really important to make sure that that is treated so that they exercise more, they build more muscle, and therefore they become more healthy and they will lose weight at the same time. So what you'll see is on the backs of their hocks, usually they're very red where they've been sat down for so long, and obviously the floor is feces in these farms, or it's the wire floor in case of layer hens. So it's really important to make sure that they are pain scored, and that is possible. You can do that, and I'll go through that a little bit later with some other species. But yeah, pain scoring them is really important. Just because an animal is eating, it does not mean that the animal is happy or comfortable. It's really important. In terms of medical care and access, I personally really do believe that layer hens do need the implant to stop them laying. I know it's a very, very costly endeavour, and I appreciate that, if you've just got 300 hens out of an egg farm, how on earth is a sanctuary supposed to do that? But I think it's something that needs to be discussed, and something that we need to just talk about a little bit more and kind of normalise a little bit. Any girls that come to me will all be implanted, and I always offer to continue to pay for that. And we kind of went into enrichment earlier, but enrichment's really important, especially if they need to stay indoors for any reason, whether it's bird flu or they've got some other symptoms. Just make sure they've got enrichment. I mean, I bought a snuffle mat in Aldi the other day. It's great. It's like £3, and chuck some bits of, peas or oats or a bit of chick crumb or whatever in that, and that'll keep them happy for hours. So even if you're rehabbing them indoors, you can still do that. A lot of people always send me messages, because whenever I've got animals in rehab, most of them will get an iPad. And my pigeon last had an iPad so he could watch other pigeons, so he didn't feel alone. And the parrot I have at the moment gets to watch other parrots while he is also on his own. So things like that are really important. They make a big difference. So I also just wanted to very quickly go into some emergency options. Chicks are really, really, really vulnerable, and I've had quite a few that were due to come to me and they were half dead. I've given advice has or hasn't been followed, mostly hasn't, and they've died before I've even been able to get them in my hand. And I very strongly feel if they had hydration and they had some electrolytes, we probably could have saved those birds. So chicks need heat, they need access to water. This little chick is almost like a before and after. That was literally within half an hour. So critical care formula you can buy online. It's great to have if you are one of these people that just happens to always come across animals or know someone that does or wants to carry it in the car. It's brilliant, and it can really, really make a difference between literally life and death. I mean, that's literally within half an hour. I mean, this chick was a hatch project chick from a school that someone alerted me to, and I got there and they were in the very classic big storage units. And what happens with chicks as well, it's really important to know this, whether they're ducklings, turkeys or chickens. You need to be very careful not to have corners, because they will gather in a corner and they will suffocate each other. And that's obviously what this school had done. And this chick had been trampled on for God knows how many days. He was completely deformed. He was soaking wet. He was freezing cold. And when the teacher brought out this box with him in it, I said, "Are you actually kidding me? How dare you leave this animal like this? You've breached Animal Welfare Act. If I see you doing hatch projects again, I will go to the press and I will report you." I made them pay for all the vet bills, and I was fuming, to say the least. How dare they teach children that this is acceptable? Absolutely terrible. So he was very, very deformed, and he actually didn't make it. And it's quite rare for any animals to come to me and not do fairly well. But I think he was so. I mean, you can see from his leg here how deformed all this was, and he'd been like this for days. So what happens a lot is when these chicks come out the egg, there's a thick ligament that runs here, and when they come out the egg, for some reason, if this doesn't sit right, or there's movement in that ligament, then you've got basically a chick with splayed legs. Can be fixed, but obviously in a chick this young and this unwell can be a problem, and also it's very painful. But I've had quite a few hatch projects that have been like this. But the other food options the other one's more of an electrolyte system, supplement, and the Emerade Omnivore I always keep as well. Again, life-saving, especially if you've got birds or small mammals. Sometimes you can use it in. It's brilliant for birds. It's a powder. You chuck it in the fridge. You mix it with a bit of water. With birds, it's really important, if you've got a bird that's really dehydrated, you do need to rehydrate them first. Critical care, that's great. This is mostly really in sort of poultry we're talking about. I wouldn't really want to go into wildlife because they're very different. This Omnivore Emerade is great. Mix it up, and often they'll just take it. And it's also really handy because you can hide a lot of medication in it. So they do generally like it, especially like the young chicks and stuff, and some of the layers that come out. But you can hide a lot of medication in it, so it's really, really handy. And it's full of calories. So if you've got a layer chicken that's come out who's emaciated and is on pain relief and antibiotics, you can kind of hide it in the Emerade, and it works really, really well. You can crop tube this as well. Has anyone done any crop tubing in here? Yeah. Has anyone got any questions about crop tubing?
Yeah, I've never done it on a chick that small. It's absolutely terrifying.
I probably wouldn't either.
How would you go? Because I've noticed there's syringe there at the end of the little bead.
Yeah.
The best way you would.
Yeah. I mean, he was game for the water. As soon as if you kind of just drop it on the edge of the mouth, they will often just drink as a response. If they don't drink, you may be a bit too far gone at that point. The other thing you can do that's fairly safe is with a paintbrush, and just load a paintbrush with a small drop. And if you just, again, wipe that on the edge of the beak, or just pop a tiny drop in at the front. If they swallow, great. If they don't swallow, you're in serious trouble anyway. But I probably wouldn't crop tube a baby this small. There are things that you can use to help you crop feed a bird that's this small, but I've seen them where they kind of damage the back of the throat, so you do need to be very, very careful in a bird like this. I don't think even I would be confident enough to do that. But there are other ways of getting hydration in, which would be injectables into the birds with a vet. So I should do this earlier, but can you see how he sat down really awkwardly, and then he's up, and then I'll sit back down again. I think this is about maybe 3 days in. But up, down, up, down. So they had a fan as well to keep them cool, because I think it's quite warm at that time, and some ice packs as well, and that seemed to really help. But they're so friendly. They just want to sit with you and be a mate. And they're probably one of my favourites to rehab, because they're so responsive. They just generally do very well. Okay, so I'm going to move on to duck. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, before you move on, I've got a couple of questions. What temperatures should broilers be generally kept at? I don't like calling broilers, but
That's okay. So on the farms, I think they are kept at 17 Celsius. It's very specific. So I would keep them within roughly that range, maybe slightly warmer. It depends on where you've got them. I mean, no bird should really be in a draft, especially if they're unwell. But yeah, you want to keep them fairly cool. If it's summer, again, if you spray them with some water and they're preening, you pop a little fan on, all those things will really help. The broilers are more likely to pant, and I would say that's not as much of an emergency as like a bird with their neck completely extended, gulping, trying to get air in. That's very different to panting, but it's still not ideal. And the ducks, so you can see here, they were panting on this farm as well. Have you got any other questions? Sorry.
yeah, two. Sorry,
Yes, go.
quick. The little chicks, just because I've been in an incident a couple of times, like the photo you've just shown me.
Yeah.
Panted.
Yes,
They had,
they're so sensitive.
but yeah, they had like heat mats and blankets, and the advice was to keep them that warm. But then looking back, were they overheated?
Yeah, I mean, you can get.
Children used to pass basically like, is it 17 even when they're like a day old?
When they're very small, no, so they will need it a lot warmer. I couldn't tell you off by heart what that temperature is, but if you use something like a brooder, so obviously chicks are generally going to be getting heat access from their parents, well, so it's from their mum, so it's from above. So a brooder is like a small, it's almost like a tiny table, and the heat will come from above, and there's 4 legs, and then they will sit underneath that. I personally always give them a toy because they're so desperate to get underneath. It's obviously such an innate thing for them to do. So I do that with them, and that seems to help as well. But yeah, you don't want to, it's a very fine line, yeah, about overheating and underheating with chicks.
Transport. So last question, please, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say as well, like giving them the option, so if the heat's coming from above, they can walk away.
Yeah.
This is through transport, so we just didn't really know.
I mean, I picked up a chick yesterday, and I just put him in my jumper, and he was happy as Larry, and he was super toasty in there. So yeah, I mean, sometimes body temperature is very safe.
It was the
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
question we were talking about just before, how much roughly is an implant?
It depends on your vet. Depends if you can get a good deal. But I think they're around 120. But say if you've got 10 hens to implant, they will probably do it for you a bit cheaper. I mean, it's like it's a big microchip, really. And there's lots of pros and cons. Some vets are pros, some vets aren't. But in terms of like having these discussions with people, there's a really great Facebook page called Vegans with Chickens. So it's got vegan principles, vegan morals, and it is bloody brilliant. So there are a lot of people in there that have been keeping chickens from all sorts of different backgrounds and really know what they're talking about. I mean, species-specific vets, you have to remember that these birds are still industry birds. So the investment into their care is still very, very early days, if at all. So ducks, has anyone done many duck rescues? Dealt with any foie gras patients? Yeah.
Have our mini ducks.
Yeah. So the Peking ducks, were they?
Yeah, they're peaking plus small.
Yes, yeah. So in terms of meat ducks, which I hate that term, but they are going to be very, very heavy breasted birds. They do crossbreed them a lot. So Peking ducks, which you probably heard, obviously, because it's such a phrase that's used in certain foods. And I think these birds were crossed with it's a really big breed, begins with M, can't remember. This photo was taken at a foie gras action. And it was probably one of the worst places I think I have ever been. The level of stress from these animals, it was actually almost too much for me to bear. I left as a non-arrestable because I was like, unless we're getting animals out, I cannot contribute towards this. So ducks are obviously kept for numerous reasons. Again, hatch projects, farms, feathers, entertainment. Things like that. A lot of people have them backyards, a bit like chickens as well. Sometimes they'll be free on Facebook, for example, free on these ads. If you can go and get them for free, get them out of there. I've rescued quite a few from these disgusting backyard places and got them into new places. So that's also another way to access animals that really do need help. I have a bit of a personal dislike towards vigils for ducks. I don't know if anyone has seen vigils of ducks, but they are stressed to the maximum. It's actually horrific to watch. They will all be open mouth breathing and panting very, very badly. And I feel like ducks they're so desperate to get away from you. And whereas the broilers don't seem to either care or they physically can't get away, but ducks are desperate to get away from you. And I think by you kind of putting yourself in a position to photograph and film, I get it, but I think there's a bit of a limit in terms of like what's necessary. A duck lorry doesn't need 50 activists around there taking photos and videos and crying. Like, I get it's really important advocacy and it's important that we tell their stories and we show what's going on. But I really have an issue with it, and I think people need to be really mindful of that. Again, first thing for ducks, if you end up rescuing them from any of these situations, they are desperately, desperately thirsty. I would imagine most of you know that any ducks, whether it's foie gras or whether it's meat farms, they will only have nipple drinkers to drink from, and obviously these birds are supposed to be able to dive and have access to copious amounts of water, so they will as well be very dehydrated. I've rescued quite a few ducks in my time, and they could not get enough water. They couldn't get enough. So that's really, really important. If you're in a car and it's all over the place, again, you can use a spray bottle just to try and keep them cool. They will again overheat very, very easily. These ducks particularly so foie gras is basically fatty liver disease. So these ducks are sick ducks on the farm. That's obviously how they get this disgusting product. So as you can kind of see, they're on wire flooring, and it was the strangest setup I've ever seen. So up here, when they were flapping around, they could get caught all along this. It was very, very strange. I've never seen anything like it. So you can see that they're actually quite covered in blood and they're actually quite injured. That's from injuring themselves on these prongs, and their feet will be really damaged as well. So ducks, where they don't have access to water, they have constant pressure on their joints as well. So I mean, ducks without water is just such a painful concept. But again, where they're spending so much time on land, their legs will be really damaged as well. So it's something to be really, really mindful of. In terms of like their pain, and obviously trying to get them to lose some weight. Now, with foie gras ducks, you can begin to reverse some of the early stages of what's called fatty liver disease from ducks and foie gras farms. You just need to do a complete diet reverse, but very, very carefully, ideally under the care of a vet, because it's very, very specific how you would do it. But it is possible to do that for them. But yeah, I can't stress enough, like when we were on the farm, I was really like, guys, I really just don't know if this is like the right thing to do. So just be very careful. If you are on a farm with ducks, they will be terrified of you, and allow them to kind of just be in a corner. They don't need people all over them. So when we were on that farm, I was like, guys, can we just like gather in a different area of the farm where there wasn't any ducks, because they were panicking, and you could almost say we were causing those injuries by frightening them. And it's just not the kind of advocacy that you want the media getting hold of, because it's going to look really bad. Has anyone got any questions on ducks?
Is it also like one of those last chance hen rescues, did a duck rescue,
Okay.
and they were like showering them
Yeah.
when they're not yet waterproof, and then it was not warm, and obviously then there's the temperature conditions for them that they could.
Yeah.
Is that something to consider as well, and keeping them away from water where they could fully submerge themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, where they've not been able to sort of have their healthy oils, which makes them waterproof. Yeah, it's a really good point. I think, again, it's just having a bit of balance of like, yeah, being mindful, like you don't want to shower them in freezing cold water. That's not going to be helpful either. And again, it's like, it's all well and good doing big rescues with big numbers, but you need good provisions to be able to actually make sure all those individuals actually do well. And I think that's why you need to have a really good educated team, like you say, to make sure that all of those animals get access to the right things, especially because they are just all in such a state of panic. They're all going to be climbing all over each other. And yeah, they can easily suffocate and overheat as well. So yeah, it's a really good point. So we're going to go on to dogs. I know this is an animal rights conference, but I really want to stress dogs are not safe. And I know we always sort of concentrate very much on pigs, chickens and cows, and it's very important in terms of numbers. But dogs really suffer at the hands of people in so many ways, and it is an animal rights issue. And I think it's really important that we don't just kind of overlook the detrimental situations that we put them into. So I want to first try to, I guess, bridge a gap that I feel like I see quite a lot between animal advocacy and animal protection and dogs in terms of the animal rights. So who feels that they generally understand dog body language? There's no judgment. I'm just very curious. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay. Does anyone have a dog who they feel they don't understand? Dogs are complicated. They are complicated. I actually started writing a post yesterday to say, like, how many people know anyone that's got a dog that, like, isn't dog reactive, can't be left at home on their own, has a skin allergy, can't touch grass. You know, there's so many mental things now these dogs are trying to navigate themselves through because of humans. Like, so many dogs have problems and we're still breeding. And I know we're all against that, but like, dogs really face so many challenges. And in terms of like how we keep them, you know, rescue and all this kind of thing, like, it's not great either. Like, dogs aren't just having a great time because they've been rescued and chucked into a concrete kennel. They're still having a terrible time. So it's really important to kind of just be mindful of that. So in terms of body language, you can be a great advocate for dogs if you can read them and understand them. And some of this stuff is really quite basic. And I think there's no consensus on what we believe is right, how we train them, how we guide them, how we walk them, how we introduce them, where we get them from. That everyone's got something to say. Everybody who's looked at a dog once is a dog expert. So I think it's really important to just kind of take a bit of a step back and just all know that we just don't know everything and there's so much to learn all the time. So body language is really important because a lot of people just really misinterpret so many things. Like, for example, a wagging tail does not mean the dog is happy or comfortable around you. You know, yawning doesn't mean that they're tired. It can mean they're actually incredibly stressed out. So those things are really important, especially when you're advocating things on your social media and you're actually using an image or a video of a super stressed out dog. Like, really not ideal. So it's really good just to have a bit of experience with dogs, I think, before you start kind of getting too involved. And this stuff is everywhere on the internet. You need to make sure you've got good resources and like evidence-based care and evidence-based knowledge. I think that's really important as well. So I'm going to put this out there. So situation is this dog is tied up to the railings in East London. You come across the dog. What are you going to do? They look like this, and they're just chained up, and no one else has done anything with them, and they just look like that. Don't worry, we're gonna get into all of this. What else?
My first would be to probably call somebody I know who works with dogs.
Okay.
I'd probably sit down and talk to the dog just for a minute or two to figure out like how terrified they are. Maybe try and reassure them. And then you can figure out what you can do.
Yeah, you had your hand up.
Yeah, that's what
Okay. Anything else? Oh.
Stop the public and other people from coming nearby, public support, space, work hard in, tell them some sort of rescues happen.
Did you have something? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Alice?
Is there anyone around? Like, is there a sign of an owner or
No.
people hanging about?
It's like just a very quiet street, East London.
I'll say RSPCA so you can discuss that option.
Thanks. Yay! Huh? We're going to discuss this. Anything else?
I think we were saying like gauging body language, see if you can approach.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. So the most important thing is probably, make friends and see how this dog is feeling. Ideally, if they've got a lead or something attached to them, happy days. So you kind of want to try and get this dog out of the situation the best that you can. What does everyone think about how this dog looks?
There's definitely like a skin condition and then the ears are looking.
Good spot. Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
Looks like maybe going blind as well.
Yeah, really good spot.
Yeah, so, and knowing like how difficult it is for some breeds to see anyway, so like scent,
Nice.
how you get to get the dog to know your scent.
Nice. That's really great. Okay, so from looking at this dog, we've got a mixed breed. They, to me, look like they're probably adult. Yeah, great spot. So you can see sort of the brown marking here and the slightly extended mammary area as well. So yeah, probably has been bred from. In terms of the ears, got two options. Either they've been badly cropped and or they have been bitten or diseased. But again, you don't know, you do not have your facts, so don't just assume. Great point about the eyes, so cloudy eyes, so that could be from chronic eye infections. If you actually look, the dog is very, very bald. Maybe they've got entropion, which is going to cause some rubbing along the eyes, but we don't know. Or some certain diseases can cause blindness in dogs. Begins with A, can't remember, do you know? I can't remember the name, it will come to me. It's a particular virus, I don't see it too often, but I have seen dogs like this go a little bit blind. So yeah, so lack of hair over the face and some small injuries over the face as well. Now, a lot of people throw the term around bait dog a lot, and it's helpful and it's unhelpful, so many different reasons. What happens, a bit like the breed labelling thing, is this history will get carried around with them for the rest of their lives. And people's perception of what a bait dog is sometimes misconceived. So I don't know if anyone knows, does anyone know much about dog fighting or had much experience in that area? Okay, so in America, yes, it's quite a big thing, but it's a thing here. It's much more underground. And it's not as rife. It's certain cultures and certain communities it is. Now, a dog that may or may not be used as a bait dog will carry around this perception that they can't be with other dogs, or that they're going to be aggressive, or that they're going to be frightened. And I cannot stress how much it's really important to base that very much on the individual dog and the individual dog's response. Now, about 10 years ago, there was a huge case with an NFL player called Michael Vick, who was a very, very famous person who had a very large dog fighting ring, and there was a lot of dogs that were seized from his property with all sorts of different injuries, and a lot of those dogs went on to live with other dogs and they were fully rehabilitated. We don't do that here. If a dog is involved in dog fighting, and certain organisations will be involved, those dogs will be dead. So be very mindful of very loaded words that can be carried with them, very important. Now, injuries from teeth will be quite obvious. There's a lot of studies that show how purposeful or accidental and non-accidental dog fights can happen, and that will be based on the types of injuries. So if you've got injuries around the back legs, it means that the dog has tried to have the ability to get away. They're not trying to confront the other dog. The dog has got severe injuries to the face. They may have obviously been having an altercation with the dog face to face. It doesn't actually mean that the dog is going to be aggressive or dog aggressive for the rest of their lives. Some of these dogs are literally just fighting for their lives. They don't actually mean to be aggressive. It's a bit like how they respond to us sometimes. So yeah, be mindful of that. So what are we now going to do with this little lovely girl? So we've got her, we're friends, we've got the lead. Now what on earth do we do? Yep. Nice, yeah. It's really important to build good rapport with animals. Now, again, very based on the individual. Some will be hungry and some will eat regardless of how stressed they are, and some won't eat because they're so stressed. So yeah, you just have to see if you can get your luck. I mean, it's a good thing to use, but again, you don't want to massively overfeed them, especially if they're going to be a cruelty case, because then their weight may be slightly different. But if you can show that they are hungry, that's a good thing as well. Anything else? Who are we going to call? Who are we going to call? Okay, so I like that a lot of people here talk about grassroots, and this is where grassroots rescues really do come into favour. Now, people will have different perceptions of what they believe the dog or the dog is or isn't, based on our perception of what we think makes up certain types of breeds that are prohibited in the UK. But again, be mindful, in other countries there are certain types of dogs that are prohibited and some that aren't. So again, do not do guesswork. It's not helpful. So yeah, ideally we want to get this dog to a vet and be the advocate for that dog. Contact a rescue so you've got somebody on standby to take this dog in. You obviously want to build some evidence, take some photos of the dog on the scales. You're probably going to want to see what's going on with the microchip. Can be helpful, can be unhelpful. And just being very mindful of human and dog safety as well. Animals aren't robots and they respond to different things in their own way. So it's really important to kind of just very much take them based on the individual. Now, I've known of cases where dogs have been severely tortured by human beings and they are still the sweetest and most tolerant dogs in the world, which is what makes it also absolutely awful, because they'll still be very sweet and wagging their tail and ears back and kind of unsure but happy to see you, whereas you may get some dogs that are absolutely having none of it because they've also had that same abuse. So everybody's going to respond differently. So yeah, try to make sure that you feel that you understand dog body language. It's really, really important. So I'm a fear-free practitioner. Anyone can be. I've obviously gone down the veterinary route, but it's really helpful. They do other courses, not just on dogs and cats, but they do, I think, equine and parrots as well. And this is very simple. The ears are such a great tool of telling you how they feel. So these little things are really, really important. And again, you don't really want to get these mixed up. And some dogs might not show any of this and will still bite you. So you need to always just be on alert with a new dog that you just don't know. So just be mindful. I'm not anti-muzzle. It's just not really something I personally use. If I've got a dog that I'm a bit unsure of and I need to do something with them, I'm obviously very careful, very gentle. I don't put dogs on tables. I don't know where this theory has come from. If I'm doing an examination, I always do things on the floor with the main caregiver because they're busy mates. Why would you not do that? Sometimes I'll just do a tie muzzle and they are great. So if you've got a dog who you don't know and you're a bit concerned and you want to get the dog in the car, but the dog won't go in the car, you think, oh God, what am I going to do here? You can very, very simply, with a lead that's attached, literally wrap around the muzzle twice and just pull to the other side, and that you've got a muzzle that's actually really safe. I worked just the other day with a dog I didn't fully feel was happy, and unfortunately I couldn't do my magic because there's just no time in emergency medicine, so just did a very small wrap and the dog was non-reactive to that. Whereas if you try to stick a muzzle on a dog's face, it's very invasive. They might have already had a very bad experience with the muzzle before. It's just something to be mindful of. I've just realised I've made a spelling mistake, which is mildly embarrassing. Resources, so National Canine Research Council will kind of back up everything I'm talking about in terms of breed labelling and rehoming. Animal Farm Foundation, I went and did some work with them in New York. They are a pro pit bull advocacy group who are just amazing. Their BSL work is just absolutely phenomenal. Best Friends Society, great. If you ever get a chance to go to their conferences, oh my God, just absolutely phenomenal. And they always serve vegan food only. Dogs for Rescue, if anyone follows them on social media, absolutely beautiful way to run a rescue. I'm so pro Dogs for Rescue, beautiful. I have been to some kennels in England run by certain charities, and my God, are they horrific. So horrific, unregulated, dogs just hidden away. Be very mindful when you're sending dogs to kennels. You need to make sure that they are kennels where they are actually properly cared for and not, treated like trash, because you'd be surprised. I've got another couple of people in there. My friend Jessica Himes, she's a clinical animal behaviourist and a huge BSL advocate. Or anti-BSL advocate. Dr. Sophie White, she's brilliant, she's very, very helpful. Dr. Kendall Shepherd, she's a vet, but she basically defends pit bull type dogs. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form educated for breed labelling or discrimination.
Yeah.
It's a dog in any way, shape, or form based on that. But do dogs with different breeds of dogs have different traits?
Yes.
That you ought to take into account in any context? Or is that totally a myth? Because I've known pit bulls that are as lovely as the stereotypical what you call a Labrador.
Yeah.
I've
It's all a cultural myth. There is no scientific evidence to state and show that there is any breed of dog that is responsible or is more likely to have aggressive behaviour. It's very much based on the individual. The Middlesex report that came out that was governed by was commissioned by the government states the same thing. There is no way to say any breed is more dangerous than another.
These rules have come out to say that, we're going to, I think in New Zealand it's now illegal to breed certain types of
Yeah.
stuff. That's all just completely fallacious. There's nothing behind that whatsoever.
Yeah. So if you think about, I've actually got some news articles from many, many years ago, and the news articles are horrific. Big snarling, bull breed type dog, killer pit bull, attacks baby, this, that, and the other. Now, if anyone is interested in this more, please come and speak to me. The National Canine Research Council goes into this. There's a lot of accredited papers that explain this a lot more. But pit bull type dogs are crossbreed dogs. So is the XL bully, all made up. So if I bred a Labrador with a pedigree Labrador with a pedigree Staffordshire Bull Terrier, the likelihood is that the breed standard, those puppies would fit into that breed standard. Looks has got nothing to do with behaviour. There will be certain genetic traits, for example, your gun dogs or retriever dogs, or dogs that are used for hunting, that will have more of a drive to do certain things. But that doesn't mean that all Springer Spaniels are great gun dogs. Some of them are completely uninterested. Border Collies, for example, not all Border Collies are great herders. So it's very much, yes, there are some breed traits, but again, it's very based on the individual. I mean, you could have a dog that's had a wonderful, wonderful upbringing that hasn't had any aversive sort of experiences as such to equate why a bite happened. But if a dog's got an ear infection that's not been detected and bites a child, who's going to be blamed? It's a huge topic and it's so complex. But I personally feel like, especially in this country, the reason that we've criminalised certain dogs is to get warrants to go into those people's houses. It's got nothing to do with the dogs. Because there's a big stereotypical perception of why those people have those certain types of dogs. Don't get me wrong, big powerful dogs do a lot of damage when they do bite people, but it's just the mess of society that we've created rather than actually being the dog's fault. But great question, yeah.
Just curious what you think would happen if you called the RSPCA or the police.
Okay, great question. Okay, so there are great people that work, yeah. Oh my God. There are great people that work in some of these spaces that do try and do good work, but a lot of these places will also be monitored by the police that will come in and identify certain types of dogs. And there are certain places that if they have a bull breed in, that's it. They're so used to them, they're coming in all the time. There's just an influx of these types of dogs in certain spaces. You just got no chance, unfortunately, of them coming out the other side. Whereas at grassroots places are just going to be a little bit more invested in trying to get the dogs out. And the police just don't do that.
So I'm walking home today, and I see a dog like that. Do what we say, taking it to the vet is going to be expensive. What would you do if you haven't got the money to pay for that vet? What's your best port of call? Somebody's going to treat it for free, or would they treat it for free? Would they turn a dog like that away?
So if a dog's suffering, it's a legal obligation for vets to provide emergency care. And you are not the sole or responsible owner at the time, that would have to pay for that. But ideally, you would just get like an advocate who would be able to take that case on. So trying to find a grassroots place that would say, yep, use our vets. Don't get me wrong, these situations don't always just unravel in a very easy way. They're very complicated. So it's important just to have that sort of extra knowledge, really. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, a lot of the time as well, it's really difficult finding a good veterinary practice.
Yeah.
Most of them will just call in the dog warden.
Yeah.
If they go to the dog warden, they've got 7 days to get killed anyway.
Yeah. So if the chip obviously shows that there's a previous owner and that person doesn't get in contact with them and no one comes to claim the dog will be killed after 7 days. Oh, pigs, very quickly. So it's playing a different video. I'm going to come back to this. Sorry, that sound is not particularly enjoyable. So pig farms, if anyone's been to a pig farm, they're like a maze, but they all look exactly the same. So just walking around in circles. Be very mindful of things like biosecurity. And zoonotic disease, swine flu is a thing. I've got another spelling mistake. And if activists are inside these facilities, for example, if they're doing an occupation, you will be blamed for anything and everything. The storylines often are activists came in and now all the pigs have got this and now we've had to kill them all and it's all animal rights' fault. So just make sure you're very mindful of your biosecurity. If you're going to do an occupation, most of the time I think they're better than some of the farmers in terms of their biosecurity. But you can do things like foot dips very easily. Just make sure you've got an accredited disinfectant to go in and out of, and obviously your suits and gloves and all that kind of thing. And also just correct advocacy. In the UK, we don't really just castrate young pigs. Most of them will be killed before they're castrated, but they probably will have their teeth clipped and their tails cut off. So just being mindful of like the kind of things that we're saying about the animals is really important, because if you're not saying things that are factual, you're just going to be discredited by the media or whoever else it is that you're speaking to. In terms of trying to help pigs, they are a challenge. A lot of sanctuaries will already be full. They're a huge responsibility. They're very difficult to keep in one place because they obviously just turn their little space into a mud pit. So it's important that if you are involved in any type of rescue with pigs, you're very careful where they go to. Sanctuaries that just have them purely on mud is not an ideal place you want to be sending a pig. So do be mindful of the care that sanctuaries provide their pigs. When you are on a farm as well, be mindful of your own behaviour. Some pigs will associate humans with beating them to stand up and taking away their piglets or causing harm to them. So be mindful of that. It's really important because you need to kind of understand some pig communication and body language before you can feel truly comfortable around them. Resources, you've got Dr. Alice Bruff, who's just here, and obviously, just decent pig-based sanctuaries that actually really do know what they're talking about. It's really important. In terms of like what you may see, this is a walkway. This is in England, and this pig was just left like that. He was a young pig who was symptomatic of something called meningitis. I don't know why he was in the walkway surrounded by mothers and their children. But anyway, he was rescued and given first aid, and he's living the dream. Very quickly, lambs. Most important thing is if they look mildly collapsed, give them glucose immediately and get them warm, and make sure you speak to somebody who knows what they're doing. Be mindful, livestock industry vets will not give the animals the same level of care, so speaking to sanctuaries and trying to advocate for them is really important. You've got Julia at Sheep Ahoy. She is the master of sheep in terms of rehab, and she's a great resource, and so is Vegans with Lambs and Sheep on Facebook. Brilliant Facebook page to use. And just in terms of their care, a lot of lambs will come with things like, they call it joint ill, but I'm going to call it what it is, which is septic arthritis. It's painful. Just putting them on a week of antibiotics is not acceptable. They need far more than that. It's really, really important. So make sure that you're advocating for animals and sanctuaries that come in if your vet's not going to give them the care that they need. They've got so much against them, especially if they're already tail docked or if they've been banded already as well. Turkeys, very quickly, again, you've got your small growing chicks. A lot of them will be debeaked, so just be mindful of that as well. And again, chicks, they're going to be fast growing breeds. They're kind of like the broilers. The white ones are like the broilers of the turkey world. A lot of them will have joint problems. If they are lame in any way, they need pain relief, and they also need antibiotics, which cannot just be a week's worth. These birds need long-term antibiotics for it actually to be effective. Be mindful that their legs will be painful as well. And you do have two types of turkeys generally that are bred for meat. So you've got your white broilers and you've got your bronze turkeys, which are the classic ones used for Christmas. But their care will be quite different. The white ones are far more fragile. Resources is Minnow and Blossom on Instagram. I don't know if anyone follows them. Rosie's Hospice, which is amazing, and the Open Sanctuary has some really good resources on there as well, specifically for turkeys. So just quickly, I want to go through care plans and euthanasia, and the reality of the situation. There has to be a very fine line with the wearing the hat of animal rights and being mindful of what is correct in terms of euthanasia and end-of-life care. Just as an example, this young fox came into me. I was working at an emergency clinic in Portsmouth, and someone ran in, and this fox is bleeding everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, like my instant reaction is, okay, we need to get this guy onto oxygen, get some methadone, and get him on some decent pain relief, and place an intravenous catheter, which I did, and start him on some shock fluids. Now, as he is on the table on oxygen, another vet comes in and basically almost pushes him off of the table and says, can someone deal with this, just kill it. So obviously that's not what happened. Once I was able to fully assess him and he had some pain relief on board, unfortunately I did realise that his pelvis was in a lot of different pieces, and trying to get him the care to recover from that would have been basically impossible. So I was in a situation where I did have to make the call, and I don't take those decisions lightly, but when it's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's very difficult to know who I can actually really go to. So kind of having a good network of people that you can speak to is really, really helpful. And things are very country specific. Now, this cat at the bottom, he's actually named after me, his name's Shak. He was my first rescue in Greece, and he had a horrendous fracture and a really nasty abscess to his hock, which is the sort of the part of the lower leg on the hind limb. And we took him to the local vets, who I knew weren't great. This cat is just after surgery, right? So he's got a buster collar on, because they didn't put buster collars on any of the cats. So when they put buster collar on, he's got no bed, he's got no food, no water. He was boiling hot. Usually they're freezing cold. He was boiling hot, and the wound, oh my God, it was horrific. And she was like, you need to give him all these antibiotics, you need to give him all these antibiotics. And I saw the surgical kit on the side, it was rusty. I just thought to myself, what have we done? This is not a good idea. And the reason we did that is because I didn't want the vet to try and do to try and repair the fracture, because it would have been worse. That's why we just said, okay, just take his leg off. And he's recovered, he's gone to a new home, and he did fine, but this cat got MRSA. And the vets didn't even know how to do a cultural swab for a non-healing wound. So getting good access to a good vet is really important, because I think it almost limits you on what's right in terms of doing your rescues. So it's really important. There are obviously different levels to care. I mean, I'm obviously try to advocate for the best, and I know that's not always possible, and I do everyone's head in by being like, they should be doing this, they should be doing that. I'm messaging people these big intense messages, but it's because most animals have so many options of healthcare that are just so denied to them based on their species. And I think also just need to be mindful of like the energy expenditure of sanctuaries and caregivers. Sometimes these things are just too much. Sanctuaries don't want to be taking in 50 broilers who will need pain relief and one-to-one care and a fan and this and that. It's a lot for people to have to do. So if you're doing rescues, you need to be mindful of like, is the sanctuary the right place? Do they have the resources, the time, the energy and the money to actually rehabilitate some of these animals? And also just the ability to cope. You know, some animals don't cope with human interactions. They don't want to be pulled around. Some animals can't have a leg amputation, or they can't go through chemotherapy, for example, because they just cannot cope with it. I personally, whenever I have an animal in my care, as I was saying earlier, they are part of our community. If I've got a chick that's got a bit of a damaged leg, I'm not going to make a decision to do surgery or take them to go and have some a specific procedure done, but I haven't spoken to other people. I like to see what other people's experiences are, so I can try and formulate a very good plan. And learning from each other is just so important, because personally I feel like every situation I've dealt with has been very different. Which is, good as well. And then you just need to think about your ethics. Lastly, I'm just going to very quickly cover euthanasia and how that's done. On a mammal, so you can see I've got the fox here. I've got an intravenous catheter in. The fox is under methadone, was unresponsive. I didn't need to sedate him to give him the injection. This is actually my old dog, top corner. He had a terminal heart condition. He had a tumour. He was going to die. So after having his heart drained twice, I said, enough's enough. We went on a nice walk, and I euthanized him on a good day. I didn't wait until he was on death's door. He was my best friend. I had to do what was right by him. So he came home, he had vegan brownies, and he was euthanized at home with everybody. And it was probably one of the most beautiful euthanasias we've ever done. In terms of birds and euthanizing birds and small mammals, vets love to gas animals, and I cannot stress to you enough how much I hate seeing that happen. So with birds, if you've got, say for example, a broiler, there's actually a video on my Instagram of this. You can give Euthytal or Pentaject via the cloaca. It's quite slow, but you can get 1 or 2 mils up there for enough for the bird to go down, and then you can go intracardiac, and your vet can do that. I have got video of that on my Instagram for that exact reason. And in pigeons or birds that's slightly larger, I just go in the tarsal vein and it works beautifully. And if I've got animals that are very, very stressed and very, fully conscious, these animals need to be sedated. It's really, really important. If they're fighting and they're really stressed and this is their final moments, they need to be sedated. So I had a chameleon who had 3 fractured legs from not having the right care, and there was no way I was going to gas him. So I actually just gave him an injection of sedation into his muscle. So you can ask your vets to do those things. It's really important that you do, because animals panicking at the last minute, are we any different to the slaughterhouse? Really important to advocate for that. And yeah, just be mindful of your vets having these types of experiences, and just trying to push the boundaries and make good relationships with your vets. I think that's it. We did it.